Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I'm David, 29, a software engineer in San Francisco. My life was usually pretty boring, just lines of code and deadlines, until I met Emma. We were together for 3 years, and I thought I'd found my partner for life. We were even talking about getting married next year. But everything fell apart with a short text message last week. I need some time to think. Don't contact me until I feel ready. She didn't explain or give me any specific reason. Just one line of text, and then she blocked all my calls and messages. The past few days, I've been lost, haunted by Emma's memory and the question of why. Everything felt heavy and suffocating. I decided to take some time off work, spend a few days by the coast to clear my head. It was evening, and I was driving on a lonely, winding mountain road by the ocean. All I could hear was the distant sound of waves and the wind blowing through the car window. Suddenly, I saw a figure standing next to a broken-down car. As I got closer, I saw it was a young woman, her eyes red like she'd been crying. She waved her hand desperately, asking for a ride. I stopped the car. She climbed into the back seat and introduced herself as Mina. Her car had broken down, and she wanted me to take her to the gas station ahead for help. We started driving, and the first few minutes passed in silence. I glanced at Mina in the rearview mirror. She was huddled, her eyes looking out the window. Mina slowly began to tell me about her own love life. Her voice was choked up when she mentioned the man she'd loved from the moment she met him. 2 years of devotion, only to find out today that he had betrayed her in the most painful way. I saw that scumbag kissing my best friend right in the car. I felt a sense of empathy for Mina. The atmosphere in the car suddenly changed. Mina wasn't crying anymore. She sat up straight, her eyes fixed forward. She spoke with a chilling emphasis on every word as she described witnessing the betrayal firsthand. Mina paused for a few seconds, letting out a weary sigh. Then her tone shifted completely. She said she charged straight into the car, pulled out a knife, and gave that awful couple several repeated stabs. Mina let out a deeply satisfied laugh as she described the scene with bright red blood and chaotic screams. My body felt paralyzed as I listened. I slammed on the brakes and turned to look at Mina, completely stunned. Mina laughed louder, a maniacal laugh that gave me goosebumps. Then she abruptly looked at me, her eyes wide. "How's my story? Do you think I did the right thing?" My throat felt dry. I couldn't utter a word. I didn't dare look at Mina again, focusing only on the road ahead, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The very next second, Mina suddenly dropped her head and started to sob uncontrollably. She mumbled that it was all just her imagination and that she hadn't actually done anything. I froze again for a few seconds, then breathed a sigh of relief, though the confusion still clung to me. I tried to advise her to verify the situation and talk honestly with her boyfriend. At least you can still meet him and ask him why you're not in a helpless situation like I am. As soon as I finished speaking, Mina suddenly lifted her head, her eyes aggressive. She pulled out a folding knife, the tip pointing directly at my side. "Turn the car around right now. I have to make sure they're dead." Mina's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. My heart was pounding like a drum. I was drenched in cold sweat. My head was spinning with all the conflicting information from just a few short minutes. So she had actually done it, and I was sitting next to a genuine psycho. With no other choice, I was forced to turn the car around. When we got back to the original spot, Mina demanded I get out of the car to confirm her suspicion. Stepping out of the car on shaky legs, I followed her to the bushes by the roadside. The scene before me made me shudder. A man and a woman lying motionless in the thicket, their bodies covered in bloody knife wounds. The woman was lying on her side, eyes wide open, staring into space. She surely hadn't made it. But I noticed the man was still faintly breathing, his chest rising and falling slightly. Are they dead? Mina's emotionless voice sounded behind me. In my fear and my desperate desire to save the life that was still there, I lied that he was dead, hoping it would satisfy Mina and make her leave. But she wasn't easily fooled. Mina stepped closer, observed carefully, and discovered the truth. Her eyes widened with rage. "You lied!" she screamed, pointing the knife straight at me, ready to rush in and finish both the man and me off. She advanced toward the unconscious man first, yelling curses about the betrayal. Seeing the urgency of the situation, I lunged after her. If I didn't fight back now, both the man and I would die. The distance between us closed as Mina swung the knife. My hand grabbed her wrist. Mina roared and struggled with the strength of a madwoman. But fortunately, her strength was nothing compared to my will to survive. In a decisive moment, I forcefully twisted Mina's knife-holding wrist until she cried out in pain, and the knife fell to the ground. But she didn't give up, her other hand clawing towards my face with sharp fingernails. With no other choice, I put all my strength into punching her straight in the face. Mina fell backward, her head hitting the ground. She lay unconscious, blood flowing from her nose. I immediately kicked the knife far away, and then shakily grabbed my phone to call the police and an ambulance. 15 minutes later, the ambulance and police arrived. The man was put on a stretcher. Luckily, he was still breathing. The unfortunate young woman was also taken away. Mina had regained consciousness. She was immediately handcuffed, then given medical attention and led away. When it was all over, I sat down on the roadside, breathless and covered in cold sweat. I felt an emptiness inside. I thought back on everything and felt incredibly unlucky. Here I was, heartbroken over my own relationship drama, only to stumble upon a deranged woman on the road. It truly was a case of the heartbroken meeting the psycho in love. But at least I could console myself that I had saved a life. My name is Claire. I'm 30 years old, a social worker, and I live alone in a small house in Elk Rapids, Michigan. I've been living here for a few years, after saving up to buy my first house. That night, it was pretty cold and foggy. I went upstairs and fell asleep quickly, until I was woken up by a sound. It was the creaking of wood floorboards, like someone was taking very slow steps inside my house. I lay still, holding my breath and listening. After the first noise, I heard the footsteps getting clearer. He was definitely moving toward the bedroom I was in. I quietly reached my hand under the bed, where I hid a small hatchet for self-defense. As my fingers touched the cold wooden handle, a voice called my name right in the room, which nearly froze me in place. I was paralyzed, not just because there was a strange man in my bedroom in the middle of the night, but because the voice was so familiar, it made me sick to my stomach. It was the voice I had heard for years, the one that haunted every cell of my body. Before I could react, he lunged. In a flash, I was pinned down on the bed. The hatchet slipped from my hand. He squeezed my neck with both hands, his face inches from mine. All I could do was stare wide-eyed at the man who had tormented me for 11 years. It was Griffin. I told him, "If you want to mess with me, just do it." But he replied, "I only want to talk to you, but not here." Right after that, Griffin stuffed a rubber ball in my mouth, then wrapped duct tape around my head multiple times until I couldn't move my jaw. He tied my wrists and ankles with plastic zip ties, blindfolded me, and carried me out of the house. I heard the car door open, he put me down, and closed the door. With such a tight space, I guessed it was the trunk of the car. The ride seemed endless. I couldn't see anything but could hear things clanging inside the car. Everything started in 2011, when I was a student at Grand Valley State University. I met Griffin when he was an upperclassman. Griffin was quiet and out of place in group conversations, so I took the initiative to help him fit in. But after that, he started texting constantly, asking me out on dates. Initially, I politely refused. Later, when his persistence was too much to handle, I told him directly that I didn't have feelings for him and blocked his number. From a quiet, seemingly harmless person, he quickly became a threat. Griffin started showing up where I worked part-time, waiting for hours just to bring me flowers. When I avoided him, he found the bus stop, waiting for me there, still holding another bouquet. I remember the time I screamed at Griffin in the street, under the gaze of many onlookers. But that didn't stop him. After graduating, I moved back to my hometown, thinking everything was over. But then, a friend said they saw him walking out of the apartment building I used to rent. I knew I couldn't wait any longer, and I filed for a personal protection order, PPO. The judge signed a 6-year PPO. I clearly remember the judge looking straight at Griffin's file and saying, "I've never seen a stalking case this serious. He is completely obsessed with you." During the time the protection order was active, I tried to reclaim my life. I found a job, bought a house, participated in sports, learned to live like a normal person. But when the PPO expired, Griffin came back. He registered at the same gym as me, joined the same soccer league. I saw him at the grocery store, at the bar. He would just stand there staring, then stick out his tongue like it was a sick game. My friends confronted him, but he just laughed and walked away. I filed for a new PPO again, but this time it was denied. I later found out he had been convicted of stalking another woman before me, but for some reason, that record didn't show up in the system. Griffin drove me to a bunker in a secluded warehouse. Inside, he kept a crossbow, rifles, traps, and ropes. Thanks to the skills I learned as a social worker, things meant to help others, I applied them to save myself. I knew he was terrified of going back to jail after his first conviction. I played on that fear. I promised not to report him if he let me go, but he said he couldn't trust me unless I agreed to have sex with him. In desperation, I agreed. It was the most painful experience of my life. I cried and trembled, trying to hide my disgust and fear, just so he wouldn't get angry. When it was over, he looked at me as if we had shared something sacred and said, "You are the one I'm supposed to marry." 13 hours after being abducted, tortured, and raped, he drove me home as if nothing had happened. I immediately ran to my neighbor's house, asking them to drive me to the hospital. A few hours later, I sat in front of a detective and recounted every detail. I helped them trace the location of the bunker, and Griffin was arrested the next day. The police camera recorded the moment. In the video, he claimed it was just a consensual role-playing game. Griffin was convicted of kidnapping, torture, and aggravated stalking. He was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison. I was disappointed that the rape charge was dropped in exchange for a guilty plea. I didn't agree with it. No one can consent under those circumstances. In court, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You are a disgusting rapist." I am still recovering from what happened. I still can't stand the smell of duct tape since that night. I once burst into tears in the supermarket just because I caught a whiff of some customer's duct tape. And every time I see someone handcuffed on TV, my body reacts unconsciously. I set up a crowdfunding page to cover my finances. Thanks to exposure therapy, I have gradually been able to tolerate the smell of duct tape without a strong reaction. Reliving the pain helps me control the fear instead of letting it control me. I did some research and learned that statistics show 1 in 3 women have been victims of stalking. I tell my story so that others can recognize the signs and act early. I advise you to document everything you suspect: dates, events, photos. Share it with your family, friends, neighbors. Tell them clearly, this is his face, this is the car he drives. I frequently share my phone's location with a few family members through a tracking app. Sometimes I think, if only I had good skills, knew how to defend myself, the police would have found me in that warehouse sooner. Currently, I have founded an organization to support stalking victims and organize training sessions for social workers and police officers. There is too little information and training on this issue. I choose to use my own story as a tool, not just to survive, but to protect others. You know, there was a time I thought Griffin truly loved me. His feelings were completely real. That's why he brought me back after 13 hours of captivity. But that love is only beautiful in his mind. To me and everyone who knows this story, it feels utterly sick. I'm Allison, 18, top of my class, and supposedly all set for college. At least that was what my parents, teachers, and friends all thought. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, after a messy night with Dylan, the quarterback, and my ex, I had been hiding something huge. My blue prom dress was loosened up after I told my mom I was stress eating from exam pressure, but it was still squeezing my stomach so tight I could barely breathe. That night was prom night. The flashing lights on the hotel dance floor were making my head spin a bit. The mix of heavy perfume and booming music was making me feel sick, but I kept forcing a smile. The first pain hit while I was dancing with Lucy, my best friend. It was like a sharp contraction tearing through my lower body, locking me up completely. I stopped dancing, trying to catch my breath. "Allison, are you okay?" Lucy looked really worried. "Yeah, I'm just tired," I said, lying through my teeth while another wave of pain started creeping in. "I think I should go outside to get some air." I pushed through the crowd. No way, there were still 3 weeks left. Another wave hit, even worse this time, and I had to grab the wall just to stay on my feet. Something wet started running down my leg. Completely freaking out, I bolted into the ladies' room at the end of the hallway. Luckily, it was empty. I locked the door to the last stall and sat down. Red liquid was pouring down my legs, making a little puddle on the floor. The next pain came fast, so strong I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming. Not now, not here. Hands shaking, I pulled out my phone but had no idea who to call. My parents? They didn't even know I was pregnant. An ambulance? Then the whole school would find out. Dylan? He was out there dancing with his new girlfriend. Time felt like it froze as another wave of pain slammed into me, even worse than before. I couldn't stop the groan that came out of my throat. A crushing pressure built up and I clenched my teeth, pushing hard without even thinking. My phone slipped out of my hand and hit the floor as I grabbed the toilet seat, my whole body shaking from the pain. The next contraction hit like a tsunami, totally taking over. It felt like my whole body was ripping apart. Sweat was soaking the back of my dress, and my hands kept slipping on the toilet seat. The pain was worse than anything I'd ever felt or even imagined. More than anything, I wanted my mom here with me right now. I clenched my teeth again, feeling something shift inside me. A wave of unbearable pressure, then a sudden slide that knocked the air out of my lungs. And then I saw the head, the shoulders, the rest of the body. Finally, a tiny whole body slid out. It just lay there between my legs, still attached by the umbilical cord, small and pale. I reached out and touched it, felt the soft, cold skin. There was no cry, no movement. "No, no, please, no," I whispered, picking up the baby. I patted its back, rocked it, did everything my instincts were screaming at me to do. But those little eyes never opened. This awful emptiness just swallowed me whole. The fear had turned into straight-up panic. People would find out, they'd know everything. All my plans, all my dreams, everything I was working toward, it would all be gone. My eyes scanned the bathroom and landed on the little trash can next to the toilet. There was a black plastic bag inside. Without thinking, without even feeling, I just tried to move gently. My vision blurred with tears as I tied the bag. I moved like a robot, wiping myself with toilet paper, trying to get rid of any trace. The music from the ballroom was still thumping through the walls. I unlocked the stall door and stumbled out. I washed my hands, touched up my makeup. Back in the ballroom, I held my tiny purse in front of my dress to cover the bloodstains and made my way to the exit. Just get out of here and go home. But I didn't even make it that far. A scream echoed from the bathroom I'd just come out of. One of the cleaning ladies had found it, and the whole place started buzzing. Someone was yelling for the cops. I couldn't move. Everything around me was spinning. I saw people staring at me, then down at the blood on the bottom of my dress that my little purse wasn't hiding anymore. I looked down and saw tiny drops of blood on the carpet, making a trail from where I stood all the way back to the bathroom. I heard police sirens blaring outside. Lucy's face popped up in the crowd, her eyes wide with shock when she saw my dress. "Allison, is that blood?" The lights above me felt blinding. All the sounds around me started warping. The floor felt like it tilted under me, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. A cop was standing at the foot of the bed, and my parents were right next to me, their faces pale and streaked with tears. My mom was holding my hand, but I didn't feel anything. "Why did you go through all this alone?" I just stared at the ceiling, the image of holding the baby and feeling his cold skin playing over and over in my head. The cop was saying something, but I wasn't listening. I heard the cop's voice, words like suspect, criminal investigation, trial, just floating in the air. But none of it meant anything to me anymore. They were just distant, hollow echoes. As sunlight started flickering through the hospital window, it hit me that prom was over. But it wasn't just prom. Everything I'd ever dreamed of was over too. I am Stephen, and the terrifying story I am about to tell took place during the recent New Year, so I remember every detail clearly. Peter, my best friend from college, asked me to come house sit and take care of his beloved dog. Peter was someone with a higher income than me, and his house was spacious and well equipped. He was going on a New Year's trip with his family but couldn't bring his dog, Jax, and didn't feel comfortable leaving him at a pet hotel. I agreed to Peter's request since I didn't have any special plans for the holiday. I don't have any relatives other than my mother. When I was 18 and started university, my mother remarried, and I was happy to see her happy with her choice. Peter said I could invite my girlfriend over if I started feeling bored. He looked at me with a knowing smile after saying that, and then burst out laughing. I stayed at Peter's house for 2 days, and the first night was uneventful, nothing out of the ordinary. I just lay on the sofa, watched a few movies, and played with Peter's dog. The second night was also New Year's Eve, and I felt a sense of loneliness creeping into the air, amidst the distant sound of fireworks and the darkness that enveloped the unfamiliar house. Though I tried to enjoy the special atmosphere as the moment of the new year approached, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation, a touch of sadness lingering within me. I decided to invite my girlfriend over. She said she would be a little late because she was having dinner with her family. It was around 10 p.m. I was lying on the sofa and absent-mindedly yawning a few times when I heard a knock on the door. I thought it was my girlfriend, so I happily ran to open the door. But standing in front of me was a completely unfamiliar girl. She introduced herself as Peter's girlfriend and said she had come to collect a few things she had left behind in his bedroom. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the girl, but it wasn't her that caught my attention. It was the surprise that overtook me. I was surprised because Peter had never mentioned having a girlfriend in any of our conversations. We were very close and shared everything. I couldn't believe that he had a girlfriend and never told me about it. However, the girl seemed confident and at ease, as if she really knew Peter and this house well. Still, I remained cautious and tried calling Peter to confirm instead of letting her in right away. But the call went unanswered. He was probably busy with the party. I didn't want to make things difficult for the girl, especially since she kept insisting that she was Peter's girlfriend. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to let her into the house. She quickly made her way to Peter's bedroom. I stayed in the living room, watching TV, but honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling of curiosity, and there was still a bit of surprise lingering in my mind. A little while later, she came back downstairs, thanked me, and left without taking much. I sighed in relief, telling myself that I had reacted a bit too stiffly and skeptically. I returned to the dog and resumed watching the show, trying not to focus on the confusing thoughts in my mind. About half an hour later, my phone rang. It was Peter calling back. The sound of music, clinking glasses, and laughter. He was still having a great time at the New Year's party. Peter was concerned about his dog when he saw my 2 missed calls. After hearing me talk about the girl from earlier, Peter was silent for a moment. He stepped away to a quieter spot and told me to explain everything clearly. "Steven, I don't have a girlfriend," Peter said, almost shouting, filled with surprise, panic, and I could sense a bit of frustration at my carelessness. Immediately my head spun, as if a bell had rung right next to my ear. Peter asked me to describe the girl in detail. I tried my best, but I couldn't remember much, just her body shape and a bit about her hair color. Peter sent me a series of pictures of the girls he knew, and none of them resembled the woman I had met. I kept the phone with Peter and ran up to his room. The valuable items he described, like the laptop, car keys, and watch, were still intact. Peter sighed and remained silent for a long while. He was probably feeling uncomfortable and even disappointed. As for me, I felt guilty for ruining the joyful moments Peter was having. I stayed awake almost the entire night, feeling confused and terrified, blaming myself a lot. I called my girlfriend and told her not to come, as I didn't want to cause any more trouble or discomfort for Peter. The next morning, Peter returned earlier than expected. Even though he didn't say a word of blame or show any signs of frustration, he actually thanked me a lot. But I still couldn't shake off the heavy feeling inside me. In the days that followed, things didn't get any better. One morning, Peter woke up and noticed signs of someone else being in the house. The front door was open, even though Peter was sure he had locked it before going to bed. Some small items had been moved, as if someone had been rummaging through them. A sense of fear filled the house, and Peter decided to call the police. I was there to explain everything that had happened on New Year's Eve. No belongings were stolen, and there were no signs of a break-in from the outside. But the scariest and most haunting feeling is knowing you are being followed, but not being able to figure out who it is. I had no idea what her intentions were, or what terrible things might happen next. Every night, Peter would hear small sounds echoing through the house, the sound of the floor creaking, footsteps softly padding on the carpet, as if someone was stealthily moving around the house. Sometimes Jax would bark frantically, but when we checked, there was nothing to be found. The atmosphere in the house became incredibly tense and suffocating. Due to work commitments and other relationships, Peter decided not to move to a new place, but to find a solution instead. Peter decided to install the most advanced cameras both inside and outside the house, and from that point on, the strange events ceased. The police continued to monitor the situation for several more months before officially closing the investigation. However, both Peter and I were still very confused, not knowing who that girl was, and whether she was the intruder or if there was another mysterious figure involved.
My name's Steven, 30 years old. I'm an architect. Together, me and my wife, Marie, had been married for a year now. Our courting time was rather short, yet both of us seemed to synchronize our zing very well. Marie's 5 years my junior, and she was very youthful for her age. She's a chief advisor for a financial firm. However tough she might seem to be, she's really in love with her inner child. Her cup of tea was everything that appeared to be cute or fluffy, or both. Teddy bears, cute decorative stickers, to name a few. Sometimes I thought I was even less important than those she deemed little angels. But I was deep in love with her personality and self, so it didn't matter that much. I even designed a single room dedicated to her unyielding passion of putting the cute things on display. I might likely have to redesign a bigger room, or maybe even purchase another estate due to her growing passion. At our 1-year anniversary, I brought a special gift for her. I was pretty sure she's gonna love it. Looking at her excitedly opening up the gift box filled me with a sense of pride and happiness. It was a wooden puppet in the shape of a joker, a clown. Marie held the puppet in hands, excited since she never had any puppets within her collection. She kissed me, then looking attentively at the gift. She even mimicked the voice of a clown in thanking me. I spent quite a lot on that gift, but it didn't matter much, as long as she's happy with it. We enjoyed a cozy and modest anniversary at home. The next day, Marie told me that she wanted to exhibit the puppet in the living room. I want to put it in a glass box so everyone will see it on the way in. Today was the day we're having some family friends coming by and a small party. Because it's the big day, so I arranged it to her wish. I left the puppet there among the table with the statues. That evening, we made a feast for the guests. Our guests were our mutual friends, Joseph, Sandra, Emily, and Robert. We feasted and talked way into the evening. Everyone was pretty excited about the puppet I gifted Marie, except Emily, who's sitting on edge the entire time. Emily was an amateur psychic, and so she knew a thing or two about the supernatural. "Dudes, come look at the eyes and smirk of this puppet," she said. "It's super creepy, like this thing was cursed or something." Her words froze everyone on their conversation, especially about the gift I bought for my wife. Moreover, it was old now. "I'm not so sure, but it reeks of negative energies. It might harm you, or at least indirectly affect your well-being and happiness." The dinner's atmosphere seemed to have sunken down after her saying. I knew clearly that it was Emily's concern for us and Marie to say so, but Marie seemed to have flustered after the few words. "You're overreacting, Emily." Marie said it straight. "Thank you for your concern, but I don't want you to poke your nose into our well-being." Marie's careless wording had really struck one of Emily's nerves. The other friends and I had managed our best to keep the intense atmosphere in check. But I didn't get it, why Marie was acting weird like that. Her regular self wasn't there that day. She spat out some of the most venomous words that slowly eroded away Emily's patience. Then the two broke into a quarrel. It surprised me the most that my wife would resort to using the high-pitched voice of the clown to evoke anger within their quarrel. At that moment, I had no other choice but to step in, dragging my wife back to her room before returning to my friends. I apologized to Emily, reasoning that maybe it was the many shots of drinks that led her to act that way. But everyone was visibly upset, especially Emily. She swore that it would be the last time she even set foot inside my home, ever. Carrying a huge burden within my chest, I came back to my room with a heavy heart. Marie had slept already. Her breath full of anger fueled alcohol. After changing her sweat-soaked clothes, I sat down with many thoughts. However, the fatigue overcame it, and I fell asleep. The next morning when I woke up, Marie was nowhere to be found. Even when I barged down to the living room, Marie and the puppet were nowhere in sight. I called out for her in fear, and to my relief, Marie's voice rang back from the dining room, joyously. I went over to see a neatly made feast prepared for my sake. Marie was in a very good mood today, and seeing her like this was a huge relief. I went in and hugged her tightly, and the two of us sat down at our dining table. The sight of the puppet sitting directly opposite me startled me. It wasn't until now that I could take a closer look at it. Its two eyes, wide open, gazed directly at me. Its creepy, uncannily human stare. "Why is the puppet here?" I asked Marie. "From this point forward, this puppet will be a part of our family, hun," Marie joyfully answered. Her answer was a true surprise, even for me. It was until then that I realized the puppet had the same food tray as mine, with almost identical portions. I stayed silent at the sight. To be honest, it's more like I was speechless. In stark contrast with my wife's bubbling happiness, I wasn't able to eat much. There's a bitter lump slowly rising in my throat. After breakfast, I got changed for work and was told from my wife that she's working from home today. It was kinda late, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. Before leaving, I waved at her through the window, seeing her holding the puppet with her. I suddenly got a creepy feeling. For a few seconds, her smile was kinda like the puppet itself. It was a tough day at work mentally for me. I was torn between trying to make up with Emily and was distracted by that damn puppet. It just went around and around in my head. When I came back home, I didn't see Marie come to greet me. Both the living room and kitchen were empty. That puppet was nowhere to be seen as well. When I came to my room, I was startled with the clown turning back on me. "Hey, who are you, and where's my wife?" I raised my voice. Only silence answered me. "If you don't respond, I'll call the police." I came closer, raising my voice. Surprised? Suddenly, that clown swiftly jumped into me. It was Marie, answering with a clowny voice that was of my wife, dressing up like the puppet I gifted her. She made some lame jokes, despite my protesting voice and facial expression. It was as if she's not there, or didn't care about it. I held her tightly by the shoulders, beaming my stern gaze into her. "Honey, this prank's getting old. I do not like this at all." She still maintained that lame joke, as if she deliberately not understanding what I was trying to say. I grumbled and gritted my teeth. It was then that Marie turned back to her normal self, claiming it was all just a joke, that I was overreacting. I nodded, agreeing with her statement. The atmosphere slowly returned to normal, to the point that I was calm enough to ask her to go downstairs for dinner. Except the fact that the puppet was still eyeballing me. Everything was pretty okay. But I didn't like that at all, especially when she's putting the puppet in between us during mealtime. In hindsight, I had no idea why I was so calm back then to put up with this. When we went to bed, I turned my back toward Marie and fell into an exhaustion-driven sleep quickly. A creepy chuckle jolted me off my sleep in the middle of the night. It took some time for me to get whose that chuckler was. By then I was completely drenched in sweat looking around. It was Marie, staring into the mirror, twisting and turning her head, mimicking the laughter of the puppet. There seemed to be some clicking sounds coming from my right side, prompting me to look there. It was the goddamn puppet, moving on its own. When I yelped at my wife, she swiftly turned her head to me, which again filled me with dread. She had somehow put on a clown makeup identical to that puppet. She burst into laughter, gazing at me with white rolling eyes. I snapped completely and turned around. Marie was hugging that puppet really tight in her sleep. That puppet's face was something completely out of this world. That's it. I had enough, I thought to myself, then grabbing the pillow into the couch. For the entire night huddling around the sofa, I couldn't sleep at all. Any sound would jolt me wide awake. The next morning I got up exhausted, tortured by a nasty migraine. I tried calling Emily to let her know that I believed her on the puppet affairs, but she didn't pick up the phone, likely still very mad about what happened last time. I groggily brought the glass box away to the storage, then I'd go to wake up Marie in our room later. I had to get rid of that damn puppet. More and more, Emily's words started to make more sense. I wasn't sure whether Marie's sudden changes had anything to do with it or not, but I was sure that this puppet haunting face would cause me more nightmares to come. But as soon as I got to the stairs leading to the bedroom, that puppet was there, moving on its own. Behind it was hundreds upon hundreds of my wife's collections, staring at me, having the identical creepy smile. Then they all came at me, knocked me off the stairs. I fell hard on the ground, hitting my head. The sensation of pain struck me hard, jolted me up from my bed. What just happened? Was it all a dream? I mumbled aloud, seeing Marie turning her back on me, seemingly asleep. I was surprised, knowing that I just leaned my head and slept upon the puppet. I shook Marie to wake her up to no avail. When I turned her body around, I was too stunned to move. She was there, stiff as a log, and her beautiful face got a deep scar to mimic on the puppet's creepy smile. I yelled out and furiously smashed that puppet with all my strength before immediately took Marie to the ER. For now, Marie's in much better shape, yet it's still many months of psychiatric treatment before she completely recovered. I almost have lost her, yet I am still unsure whether that accursed puppet had a hand in this or not, as Emily had stated it earlier.
My name's Monica. I'm 22. I love myself, and yeah, I'm confident in my own skin. My friends always say I'm pretty easy on the eyes. I used to live in a rougher neighborhood. But once my parents' business started picking up, we moved into a decent middle-class home. The area was great, quiet, clean, and mostly full of folks who didn't look like us. We stood out, sure, but people were chill. They welcomed us. I've got this habit. I swipe on Tinder more often than I'd like to admit. Most of my friends, I actually met them through the app, and honestly, they turned out to be cool, but I'd never had an actual thing from Tinder. That is, until I matched with Brian. This guy? Drop-dead gorgeous. Tall, built, curly brown hair, piercing blue eyes. The first time we met up, my heart was pounding like crazy. He gave me this once-over, not in a creepy way, more like he was surprised and into it. Then he spoke. Instant jelly. I'd never felt that way about anyone before. We started bumping into each other all the time, not like planned dates, more like weird coincidences. Coffee shops, parks, the gym. Everywhere I went, boom, there he was. One day he casually mentioned we lived in neighboring areas. Thing is, I don't remember telling him where I lived, but honestly, I didn't care. He was hot enough to make me forget everything else. So yeah, we officially had our first real date as a couple. He picked me up like a total gentleman and even came inside to say hi to my parents. They were totally charmed. Couldn't stop smiling at him. Midway through the date, Brian said he forgot something at his place and asked if I wanted to swing by with him. But the moment we stepped inside, everything just blew up. I was barely through the door when I heard a woman screaming from inside the house, "Intruder! Intruder!" I freaked out and grabbed onto Brian's arm like my life depended on it. Then this woman stormed in from the hallway, furious, wild-eyed. She looked just like Brian, so yeah, I figured it had to be his mom. Just shoved me away from him, pushed me out the door, slammed it in my face. I stood there, totally thrown. Brian rushed out right after trying to calm the situation, but his mom was going off. She started smacking his chest and yelling, "She's not the kind of girl you deserve." Yeah, I got the message loud and clear. I turned away before she could see my eyes welling up. On the drive back, Brian kept apologizing, nonstop. He was scrambling to explain why his mom acted like that, and just kept saying sorry over and over. I knew it wasn't his fault. The date itself was actually great. It's just the whole apology overload kind of made things awkward. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents anything, because honestly, I still really liked him. A lot. After that, Brian and I kept texting, kept meeting up, and the more time we spent together, the closer we got. One day, Brian and I made plans to meet up during my lunch break. Everything was fine, until his face suddenly changed after checking a text. "What's wrong?" "It's my mom. She said she just drove by and saw us. She's really pissed." At that point, I wasn't even worried about her. Honestly, I was just annoyed. He's a grown-ass man. Why the hell was she still all up in his business? We shrugged it off and kept sipping our coffee until she actually showed up. Brian's mom walked right in, smiling at me like she was doing it just to mess with me. Then, out of nowhere, she threw something at me. It was in a tied-up bag, but the smell hit me before it even landed. Brian and I looked at each other, both frozen. He jumped up to stop her. I looked down at the bag. It was shit. This woman had just thrown a literal bag of feces at me. I was beyond done. I stood up and walked out, furious. Brian ran after me trying to explain, apologizing like crazy. I ignored everything that day. No calls, no texts, no FaceTime. I was seriously pissed that Brian hadn't set things straight with his mom about us. That evening, when I walked out of the office, her car was parked right next to mine. She got out and told me to stay away from Brian. I told her she should probably have that conversation with her son too. Then I got in my car and drove off, leaving her standing there, staring at me with that same nasty look in her eyes. When I got home, my phone started buzzing with texts, unknown number, all threats, creepy, specific stuff about me and my family. I didn't respond. I just called Brian, told him everything, and I said we shouldn't see each other anymore. His mom had crossed the line. Brian said he'd talk to her and that he'd wait for me, no matter how long it took. The next morning, I woke up to my mom screaming. My dad and I ran to the porch, and what we saw stopped us cold. 3 dead birds lined up. Next to them, a note with just 3 words. Mom, Dad, Monica. My dad looked at me furious and demanded I tell him what was going on. So I did. I told him everything. My parents called the cops. They went to Brian's place, but his mom denied it all. Worse, she turned around and said I'd been harassing her son. I showed the police my text with Brian, laid it all out. They took notes, logged the threats, and said they'd follow up. That night, the strange number messaged me again. It's over. I replied, What do you mean? These threats didn't scare me. The next day, on my way to work, I noticed a black car parked in front of my office. When I opened the door and stepped out of my car, I heard footsteps running behind me. Suddenly, a strong force grabbed me from behind, covering my mouth so I couldn't scream. The last thing I remember was being thrown into a car. When I woke up, I found myself in a hotel room, still fully dressed, thank God. Brian's mom was standing at the door of the hotel room with 2 of her henchmen. An evil smile was on her face, the woman looking elegant but cruel. I faced her. Why did you do this? She screamed, almost insane. You're not worthy. You ugly duckling. You don't deserve my son and my family. Anger exploded inside me. I straightened up, firm, determined to maintain my confidence and pride. I don't need your approval. I know my worth, and I won't let anyone hurt me. When she lunged at me, I shoved her away and ran toward the door, but her 2 strong henchmen immediately blocked me. I didn't hesitate. I bit, fought like a wild animal. I used all my strength to break free, and finally I did. I ran out of the room, sprinting down the hallway. My heart was pounding like thunder, and I quickly grabbed my phone to call the police. Just as I ended the call, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I couldn't react in time, and fainted. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. My parents were standing next to me, their faces worried, and even Brian was there. He looked at me with regret, constantly apologizing. I couldn't hear anymore. I looked at him, feeling sadness and disappointment. I can't continue with you, I said, my voice cold and firm. Thank you for what you've done, but I can't be in a relationship like this. I didn't need to explain further. What I felt, he would never understand. Brian just stood there, silent, saying nothing more. I didn't need any more apologies from him. I knew I had done the right thing. I'm Bianca, 27, working in an office and making enough to enjoy the things I love. I've been single for years. Past relationships really broke my heart, but I still believe I'll find my other half, and I'm always ready to open my heart to someone new. Last year's Valentine's Day was just like every other year, quiet and nothing special. But that morning, I found a handwritten letter in my desk drawer. It was from Isaac, the new guy at work I had a thing for. He asked me to come over to his place for dinner at 9 that night. I kept reading the letter over and over, my heart racing like crazy. Was that some kind of joke? But his signature at the bottom was legit, and his handwriting was neat and confident, just like him. Isaac was the guy everyone noticed as soon as he started at the company. He was tall, good-looking, and had this confidence like no one else. He always knew how to grab everyone's attention without even trying. Out of all the girls into him, I was the least noticeable, so I didn't have the guts to tell him how I felt. I was feeling both happy and confused. trying to figure out why this was happening to me. I rushed through work, drove home, and spent hours getting ready. All I had with me was a red dress that hugged my body, some fancy heels, and a bottle of good red wine. I stood in front of the mirror, checking out my face, telling myself everything would be fine. I thought that night was going to be a night to remember. The road to Isaac's place was in a quiet neighborhood. The bare trees lined up under the yellow glow of the streetlights. The house was at the end of the road, and the light from the windows looked like an invite. I got out of the car, and the chilly February air made me shiver a little. I felt a rush of excitement as I knocked on the door. The door opened, and there was Isaac with his usual warm smile. He looked perfect as usual, with his shiny black hair and sharp suit that really showed off his confident vibe. "You're here." His eyes practically lit up with satisfaction. I walked in, and the smell of food and lavender from the candles filled the air. The place inside was really neat. The dining table was set up with flickering candles and dishes that smelled amazing. I felt like I was in a dream, but then a sense of unease started creeping in. We clinked glasses, and I tried to chill out a bit more, but my eyes just wandered to the paintings on the wall. At first, I thought they were abstract paintings, but when I took a closer look, they kinda looked like drawings of human anatomy. The details were so vivid, it was creepy. Some of them even had notes scribbled in red ink, like there was some kind of plan coming together. I started feeling confused and uneasy, so I stood up and used the excuse of needing to wash my hands to get away from the table. The bathroom was at the end of the hallway, and the light from the dining table didn't reach that far. I walked in, and my eyes immediately went to the mirror above the sink. There was a red smudge on the mirror, like someone had tried to wipe it off quickly with their hand. I just stood there in front of the mirror, every stroke of the painting stuck in my head, making my mind race with a bunch of unanswered questions. All of a sudden, I saw something flash behind me in the mirror. My heart skipped a beat, but when I turned around, the hallway was empty. A chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but think maybe I was walking into a trap that had been set up from the start. Back at the table, the vibe between Isaac and me had totally changed. His smiles weren't warm anymore. They were cold and calculating. The room got suddenly stuffy, and time felt like it was slowing down in a creepy way. My eyes landed on a big painting on the wall. In the painting, there was a girl with blonde hair and big eyes. Sarah, that name just popped into my head, a former coworker who left a few months ago. A wave of horror hit me. I couldn't stay calm anymore. I stood up, quickly said thanks, and asked if I could leave. But Isaac wasn't letting me leave that easily. He stood up, blocking me, and the smile on his face turned into something pretty terrifying. Isaac stepped closer, and I could feel my breath getting faster. I saw a cold, lifeless look in Isaac's eyes, like he'd lost all humanity. I took a step back, but my foot got caught on a chair. He lunged at me, and I barely had time to think before I pulled out the fork I had hidden in my bag. I swung it, and I felt the resistance as it stuck into Isaac's hand. He screamed and stepped back just enough for me to make a run for the door. I rushed to the front door, but it was locked from the inside. I could hear Isaac's footsteps and curses echoing behind me. I turned around and saw him coming at me with bloodshot eyes and a face twisted in pain. His hands were red, but he didn't stop. I ran to the nearest window and used all my strength to smash the glass. As the glass shattered, I climbed through, even though my hands got cut by the sharp pieces. I ran like mad down the dark street, feeling all warm and wet from my palms and knees. But I didn't stop, too scared to look back. When I got to my car, I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and drove off. My heart was pounding, and every breath felt heavy, like I had just escaped from hell. When I got to the police station, I almost collapsed, my whole body shaking. My story made the police head straight to Isaac's place. They found his secret basement, where he kept stuff and pictures of his past victims. Isaac was caught trying to hide not far from the house. His cuffed eyes kept staring me down through the police car window, like he wanted to haunt me forever. The house, the paintings, and Isaac's eyes still popped into my head every night when I closed my eyes. I knew I dodged death, but the darkness Isaac brought would always stick in my head, something I could never shake off. I'm Jackson, 14, living in a small town in the Midwest. My house is smack in the middle of a sparse forest, where oak and maple trees stretch as far as you can see. A week ago, my parents had to go on a business trip and left me home alone to take care of the place. My mom asked our neighbor Kate to check on me the first day, and my Aunt Tabby was supposed to stay over the next day. Like most teenagers, I was pumped to have the place to myself for a whole day, free to do whatever I wanted. But then, the quiet of the house, the eerie stillness of the forest, started creeping in, wrapping around me like a thick, dark curtain. That first night, I lay in bed, the soft yellow glow of my nightlight making the room feel less empty. But the peace didn't last long. There was a knock at the window. At first, I figured it was just the wind, but the tapping kept going, steady and relentless. When I pulled back the curtains, all I saw was darkness, but on the glass, a message appeared in the steam. I am looking at you. As I tried to make sense of what was happening, a piece of paper got shoved under the door. On it, in messy, slanted writing, "Do you want to know the secret of this house? Play my game." I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and tried to call my mom, but all I got was no signal. Right then, the lights started flickering like crazy. Then, boom, total blackout. Panic hit me hard. I ran to the front door, yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't move. The latch was locked. From the outside, a voice drifted in from the window.
"I used to live here before you came. This house has secrets your family never knew. I can help you find them, but you have to do what I say."
I was trapped, my own house, and I couldn't get out. In that moment, all the fear of a 14-year-old kid swallowed me whole. I couldn't say no. He slid another piece of paper toward me. "Go to the storage room under the stairs." The basement was a place I almost never went. It was dark, damp, and reeked of mold. With a shaky flashlight in my hand, I felt my way through the old wooden door. In the dim light, I spotted a big metal box buried under a pile of dusty old bottles. I pried it open and nearly dropped it in horror. Inside were rotting animal remains, cat bones, dog bones, even tufts of rabbit fur. The box reeked of death. My hands were shaking so bad, I let it go.
"This is just the beginning."
From the window came a low, chilling voice. "Go to the living room and look under the wood floor." I yanked up the old carpet in the living room and found a cracked floorboard. I pried it open. Sitting underneath was a glass jar, filled with dried blood and tiny bone fragments. I couldn't tell what kind of animal the bones belonged to, but something in my gut told me they'd been there a long, long time. I picked up the jar, and as my flashlight hit it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were several shriveled, dried-up human fingers. The fingernails were still there, but the skin had shriveled up into wrinkled, leathery patches. My whole body shook as I stumbled back. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer. Instead, his voice drifted through the window, low and icy.
"You want the truth? There's one more place. Check the kitchen cabinet under the sink."
I don't know why, but I listened. Fear had shut off every logical thought in my brain. I was just moving, like a puppet on strings. The second I pulled the cabinet door open, a disgusting, stomach-churning stench hit me like a punch to the gut.
Among the rotting trash and crumpled plastic sat a black garbage bag, knotted tight. As I peeled it open, the first thing I saw was hair, dark, matted. Then, smaller pieces of bone, and buried deep inside, something that made my breath stop cold. A severed human hand, the skin pale, stiff, frozen in time. I let out a scream and fell backward, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. That hand, it clung to my mind, wrapping around me, pulling me down into a nightmare I couldn't escape. Then he stepped into view, standing outside the window. This time, he wasn't wearing a mask. His face was hollow, his eyes bulging with red veins, like he hadn't slept in years.
Did you see that?
He whispered.
This used to be my house. I lived here when it was abandoned, but then your family came, and he chased me away.
He pointed at the plastic bag.
That's what I left behind, proof that I was here. The animals I found, the people who tried to make me leave. You have no right to be in this house. It's mine.
Then, out of nowhere, he lunged inside, gripping a massive hammer. I didn't think. I just swung the baseball bat to him. With all my strength, it connected with a sickening crack. Panic had taken over, wiping out every other thought. Eyes shut tight, I just kept swinging, again and again. He finally hit the ground. Still. By the time the police got there, they found everything I told them about. Animal bones, human fingers, and the twisted tools he used to hunt and store his works. The human arm in the kitchen drawer was confirmed by DNA to belong to a guy who'd been missing for years. He used to live near the house and had a rocky history with the stranger. Turns out, he was the one who tried to kick the guy out when he was squatting there as a homeless man. That stranger had been using the house as his hideout for years. He had killed, dismembered, and stashed the remains in different corners of the house, his sick way of marking what he thought was his. The police found out he had a long history of severe mental illness, paranoia, violent outbursts, the whole deal. In his twisted mind, this house was the only place that made him feel safe. Losing it had pushed him over the edge. After everything, I couldn't go back to that house. I can't shake the feeling of being led step by step, like a puppet dancing on the strings of a madman. Every time I close my eyes, I hear his voice. I see that arm. In the end, I realized that real danger doesn't just come from the monsters hiding in the dark. It also comes from broken minds. Society left him behind and shoved him to the edges, and in his loneliness, he built a twisted world of his own.
My name's Devlin, and this story goes back to a stormy night 22 years ago, when I was just 13. We lived in this old 2-story wooden house way out on the edge of Jacksonville. Right behind it was this thick forest where I'd spend pretty much every summer day playing. I used to love that forest, until that night. The wind was going crazy, howling like some wild animal, slamming branches against the windows, and the rain was coming down in sheets. We were all in the living room, glued to the news. They were talking about major flooding and blackouts all over the place. "We should grab some candles and flashlights," Mom said, her voice blurred over the noise of the rain. She looked out the window and asked, "John, do you think the power's gonna go out?" Dad rested his hand on her shoulder and said, "Maybe, but don't stress about it." Before he could even finish the sentence, everything went pitch black. "I'll check the fuse box. Devlin, go get the flashlight from the kitchen drawer for me." I stumbled around in the dark, grabbed the flashlight, and followed Dad out the back door. The second I stepped outside, I shivered. The wind was blowing through the trees and sounded like some kind of weird creature crying out. While Dad messed with the fuse box, I turned to look at the woods. The flashlight wasn't strong enough to cut through the rain, but I could still make out the shadows of the trees swaying like crazy in the wind. Then, out of nowhere, this cold chill ran down my spine. I heard something weird coming from the woods. I pointed the light that way and saw it. a pale, skinny arm reaching out from behind a big tree trunk. I just stood there, frozen, thinking no way I was actually seeing that. A few seconds passed, then I turned, dropped the flashlight, and bolted back into the house, not even stopping when I heard Dad calling after me. "Devlin!" "What's wrong?" Dad rushed in behind me, face all scrunched up with worry. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from pure fear. "There's someone in the woods." I saw an arm. Mom and my sister Amy were sitting on the couch, both staring at me, totally confused. "Are you sure?" "It could just be the shadow of a tree. Things look different in a storm," Dad said, trying to sound calm. "No, I saw it," I said again, but my voice was all shaky, and it didn't sound very convincing. "Okay, I'll go check. It could be someone lost in the storm. Mary, keep the kids in the house. Lock the door." Mom begged him not to go out and told him to call the cops instead. "In a storm like this, they'll take hours. Just look around," Dad insisted. I wanted to stop him, but I was too scared to say anything. He stepped outside and vanished into the rain. Mom locked the door and pulled us in close. 5 minutes went by, then 10. I couldn't sit still. "I'll go find Dad," I said, getting up. "Devlin, no, Dad's fine. He knows how to protect himself." I sank back down, eyes glued to the window. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice calling from outside. "Devlin!" It was Dad's voice, but it sounded weirdly far away. Without thinking, I ran to the window. "Dad, where are you?" "Mary, Devlin, open the door." That was Dad again, but this time it was coming from the woods. I grabbed the flashlight and made a run for the back door before Mom could stop me. No way I was going to leave Dad out there alone. "Devlin! Come back!" Mom shouted, but I was already outside, getting soaked by the rain. I aimed the flashlight at the woods and started yelling for Dad. Then I heard footsteps, but they weren't coming from where Dad's voice had been. The footsteps were coming from a different direction, deeper in the woods. I swung the flashlight that way, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw someone walking toward me. "Devlin? What are you doing here?" I almost dropped to my knees in relief. It was Dad. But wait, how could that be? I just heard him calling from the opposite direction. "I heard you calling from the woods," I said, my voice all shaky. Dad's face tightened. "I didn't call you. I was just checking around the house." A cold chill crept down my spine. If it wasn't Dad, then who the hell was calling me? "Go inside." I spotted someone running into the woods. We ran back toward the house, but the door was locked. "Mary, open the door," Dad yelled. No response. "Mary!" Dad called out louder, and a whole new kind of fear hit me. Then we heard a noise from the front of the house. Someone was messing with the front door. Dad held a finger up to his lips to tell me to stay quiet, and we slowly moved forward. Through the window, we saw Mom looking through the peephole, her face pale as a ghost. She turned, whispered something to Amy, and they both rushed upstairs. "Mary!" Dad knocked on the window, but Mom didn't hear him. The doorknob rattled again, this time harder, more aggressive. Dad grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back door. "Devlin, I'm gonna bang on this door. When I get in, you run straight upstairs to Mom and Amy." I just nodded, too freaked out to say anything. Dad slammed on the door with everything he had. After the third bang, it flew open. We rushed inside, and I bolted straight upstairs. I found Mom and Amy in Mom and Dad's bedroom, both of them shaking. I saw it through the peephole. That's not a normal person, Devlin. That face. I couldn't deal with it. And I got it. I'd seen that face too, out there in the woods. That wasn't a human face. Then we heard Dad's voice downstairs, followed by the sound of glass shattering. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Slow. Mom shoved us into the bathroom and locked the door. "Mary? Devlin? Amy?" Dad's voice echoed from right outside. We didn't make a sound. Barely breathed. "Mary, open the door. It's me." Dad's voice sounded totally normal. Mom pressed her hand over mine and Amy's mouths, telling us to stay quiet. "Mary, open the door." Dad's voice was angry now, and the doorknob started rattling hard. Then we heard another voice from downstairs. "Mary, Devlin, Amy, where are you?" It was Dad's real voice. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, followed by banging on the door, someone yelling. We just clung to each other, frozen, not even twitching. After a while, it all went quiet. Just dead silence. Then came Dad's voice again, soft and worried. "Mary, are you in there?" "John? Is that really you?" "It's me. Everything's safe." Mom slowly cracked the door open. Dad was standing there, blood running down from a cut on his forehead. "What happened?" "I don't know for sure," Dad said, catching his breath. "But it isn't the thief I thought it was." Dad led us downstairs. In the beam of the flashlight, I spotted something weird lying still on the floor. "What is it?" I asked, my throat tight. Dad pointed the light at it. It looked sort of human, but definitely wasn't. Its skin was super pale, its limbs were way too long, and its face looked all twisted, like it was trying to change into someone else, but couldn't quite get there. It tried to copy my dad's voice, and if Mom hadn't taken a second to really look through the peephole instead of just opening the door, who knows what kind of awful thing could have happened. The next morning, the storm was gone, and so was the monster. All that was left, where it had been, was a shallow puddle of water. No one believed what we said. The cops just chalked it up to fear, said maybe we were seeing things, or the real thief must have slipped away during the night. 12 years have passed, and still, on stormy nights, I wake up sweating from nightmares about that face and that fake version of my dad's voice. I've never told anyone outside my family about what happened. Who would even believe me? But last night, my 12-year-old daughter said she saw a weird figure in the backyard, a figure with arms that were way too long. And the forecast says there's a big storm coming tonight.